A lot of action since the NBA free agency market opened up on Wednesday, but who improved the most for next season? Hey, how are you, folks? Jason Horowitz, glad to be with you here on CBSSports.com. Let's bring in our NBA columnist, Ken Berger, to break this down. And Ken, Rasheed, Wallace, Jason Kidd, the latest to agree to terms with teams. But when you look back at all the moves that have happened since last Wednesday, who do you think really helped themselves the most with one move or maybe two moves for next season?
Well, really, when you look at the landscape now, it's been all about the contenders, with the exception of Detroit, which went out right away and signed Ben Gordon or agreed to terms with Ben Gordon and Charlie Villanueva, and Toronto, which kind of came in, swooped in, and stole Hedo Turkoglu away from the Blazers. It's really all about the contenders. Now Boston adding Rasheed Wallace, Cleveland, remember, before the draft, acquiring Shaquille O'Neal. I consider that part of this whole shake-up as well, even though it wasn't a free agent signing. And San Antonio with Richard Jefferson in that trade with New Jersey. So, right now, the Lakers, the Celtics, it's all about the contenders and, the rich getting richer in the NBA right now.
And Orlando adding Vince Carter on the day of the NBA draft as well. Ken, you mentioned Rasheed Wallace to the Celtics. Do you think that move is better for Boston than Cleveland adding Shaquille O'Neal?
I'm not sure I would go that far. Shaquille is a tremendous addition for Cleveland, especially considering what they're looking at next summer with LeBron. They need to keep him happy and show him they're committed to winning a championship. The Celtics were looking at that move. They were looking at the Lakers adding Ron Artest, and that's why they sent everybody and his uncle to Detroit to recruit Rasheed last week. They sent the big three and Danny Ainge and Doc Rivers and everybody, and they really felt they needed to get this guy. And I think that's a big upgrade for them. I think, both from a basketball standpoint, giving them another front court player who can stretch the floor, and also from an attitude standpoint, I think it's a good mix. I mean, I think everybody knows that Rasheed's a little out there and a little bit on the edge, and I think what a lot of people don't realize is how edgy the Celtics locker room is as well.
Ken, when you mentioned some of the other moves here with Toronto and with Detroit, who do you think made themselves closer to being a contender next year? Detroit with the two guys they are planning on signing and have agreed to terms, or Toronto with Turkoglu?
I think Detroit has to do a little more. I think this is part of a plan, and I think the decision they made was to go for it this summer as opposed to being left with with not too many options next summer when a lot of teams have cap space. They were the team with the most cap space this summer, and they decided to roll the dice and start rebuilding. Toronto, with the addition of Turkoglu, especially the way it went down, with him agreeing verbally with Portland and then all of a sudden changing his mind, and Toronto GM Brian Colangelo was able to swoop in and get him. You add him to Chris Bosh and Jose Calderon. That's a pretty formidable group right there, and I think they probably had further to go in terms of some of the other contenders that improved. So I think the impact of Turkoglu on Toronto is going to be pretty substantial.
Ken, as we move forward here, the two names that right now that Sheed and Jason Kidd have agreed to terms, it seems to be the two thrown out there the most that are the next biggest names are restricted free agents, David Lee and Paul Millsap. What's the market there for them?
Well, so far it hasn't been very good. There has not been the groundswell and the interest thus far on either one of those guys. A lot of people assumed that David Lee was going to command a big offer, but I think his situation is, first of all, he's restricted, as Millsap is. So the Knicks with Lee and the Jazz with Millsap are sitting there able to match. The other thing with David is that he would be a base year compensation guy, so he's hard to sign and trade because his cap number is huge in the first year. The Knicks, Donnie Walsh is just kind of sitting in the background saying, okay, he's letting this come to him. He's been around the block a few times, and he kind of predicted that this would happen, that he would be sitting in the driver's seat at the end of the day.
All right, Ken Berger, thank you very much. Still a lot to happen over the next couple of months. We'll see how it all plays out. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, Jason.
All right, folks, for more on the NBA, be sure to stay up to date with Ken Berger here on the Berger Sphere on CBSSports.com. I'm Jason Horowitz. Take care, folks.